This is Phantom Electric Ghost, and we're live on the air with Anna Reger, and you are the CEO of FlipLok. We're going to talk more about that. But I want to welcome you to the Phantom Electric Ghost podcast. How you doing this afternoon?
Doing great. How about you?
Doing pretty good. We're in the great state of New Hampshire, and
Oh,
it's pretty nice. Well, it's kind of overcast here, but it's still nice and out in the pines. But thank you for being on the show today. Before we get into the heart of your story, we always ask every guest on the show a couple questions. One of the questions we ask is like, what motivates you? And why do you do what you do?
okay. That's pretty simple. Thank you, first of all, for having me on the show. Um, what motivates me? Really, I'm motivated by change or doing something that gives back to society in general, right? I'm not motivated like a lot of people motivated financially. Financials don't really motivate me as much as when we go into why do I do what I do? I believe that doing what I do can save lives. And so what more is there to do than get up every day and believe that you can save lives and really go into action and do that every single day? As a mom, it's the most rewarding thing I can do for, I think, everyone.
Well, I think that's really important because one of the folks we're going to talk about creating a safer environment for schools and in the home. And FlipLok, we're going to talk about like how does that do that, and what made you come up with the concept of FlipLok to help people have safer environments.
So what you want me to tell you what made me come up with it? Well, I'm a mom, like I said, I'm a mom, bonus mom to 6 kids. Was in my office, and all the other kids are pretty older, and honestly it never really hit me until it hit me, which was I got an alert. I was sitting in my office and it was like, there's a lockdown in your area, there's a person, trying to
Hmm.
hurt people. And so I was like, whoa, I don't have a clue what my youngest daughter is supposed to do in that moment. She's in elementary, she's really small. And so everything was okay, and I got home and I asked her, what do you do? Tell mommy about your day, what happened? And so she said they, run in the classroom with the teacher, they get against the wall with their friends, and their teacher locks the door and the teacher turns off the light. And I said, okay, well, can you lock the door? And she said, no, mommy. And I said, how do you know if the door is locked? And she was like, my teacher does that. And I said, okay, well, what do you do if your teacher's not with you? And
Hmm.
I got deer in headlights, and oh, mommy had a problem with that. And because I was expecting, oh, we do XYZ if the teacher's not there, but you have my child totally dependent upon a teacher is unacceptable, right? And
Hmm.
is the lock that they have strong enough to stop somebody that really wants to get in the other side of that door, was the next question to me. And so that's what started my journey with FlipLok. The school side I started first, because of that reason and mission. And, of course, I had a lot of pushback. There's a lot of laws. I didn't know, for fire, for this, for that. So I had to modify and adjust and adapt and do more parts and creations for my lock. And it's because my mission was bigger than I'm going to get stopped by some kind of code. I just need to figure out how we can work together in our mission to save lives. Fire people want to save lives, and I want to do the same thing. So that's how it started with FlipLok. And then as I started becoming the mom going down the mountain of, safety and our kids, I started realizing like, wow, my other kids that live on their own, somebody has a key, they're renting, this is not a good situation either. So then we created the residential lot, my husband and I, and that's been my focus company for past 4 years now.
Wow. So did you have like the concept of the engineering for it, or just the overall idea of what it could be, and then you work with engineers and
So the actual invention of the device itself, the original version was my husband and I were at breakfast. We were in San Antonio. We were looking for another investment property, and he woke me up and we went to breakfast. He's not allowed to wake me up at 3 in the morning with his great ideas. He has a lot. And I need sleep. So 7 o'clock in the morning, we went to have breakfast, and he drew this. He said, I got it. And I was like, what do you got? And he drew this thing on a napkin. And I had I'm not a visual person like that. I have to like see the real thing. And
Mhm.
so in his mind, it was this great thing on a napkin. To me, it was a scribbly thing. I had no idea. And so then I said, call the office, get them to put it on the 3D printer. And when we get to Houston, I can see it, and then we can go from there, right? So it was just a 3D printed version that our guy that printed it said it wouldn't work. And my husband was like, it's going to work. And then it became this process where we were working on it. And I was like, no, it needs to be red. It needs to be big. It needs to be red for emergency use. When you're under duress, the kids need to know like it's right there, big and red, right? And then when they flip it, it needs to say call 911. And there needs to be a key to unlock it. You figure all that out. Let me get it into the schools, right?
Wow.
And then later, we went into like the up north and other schools in Illinois and places like that, because in Texas, where I'm from, there was other fire codes that our lock as it stood didn't meet. So I spoke to our fire marshal and I said, is there any way we can work together? You're talking egress and I'm talking desk stacked against the door. Which one's a bigger fire hazard, right? What can we do differently? And so she did. She said, okay, well, I will, if you can make it a one motion egress, I'll write you a letter. And that's exactly what she did. But it took me a year and a lot of personal investment into making that. It's not something that you just do overnight. You got to buy molds. You got to come up with a design,
Yeah. So,
test and test and test.
so had you already been in the manufacturing space or been built working on devices as an entrepreneur? So this was something that in your wheelhouse, or was this a totally new concept to what you've normally done as an entrepreneur?
Yeah, this was a new concept. I mean, bringing things to market is kind of something my husband and I are really good at. He's really, really good at it. He's more the visionary, creative person. But sometimes when you bring something to market, you have to also, because we have a lot of different little ideas that we just decided not to patent and things. But if you don't have the passion for it, and if you don't see that there's going to be a viable business, because initially you're gonna have to invest at least all your savings or a
Mhm.
lot of money, and you're going to have to be willing to put it all on the line, and that comes with a lot of pressure, and a lot of people don't do that. And so you have to, before you decide to go all in, decide is this something you really believe in, because you have to believe in it, not anybody else. And you're going to get people that are going to tell you that's not a good idea, you shouldn't do that, you should stick to real estate, that's what you don't know what you're doing. And us, when I'm a mom and I know what I'm doing because I have kids and I know what they will do. And so I just didn't listen to anybody, and you have to stay in that. So going into the manufacturing of it, yes, we had created other products, not like this one, but we have created other products and we have brought them to market, but definitely not like this. It was totally a new experience for us making this particular product and then getting it perfected, right? There's a lot of time, there's a lot of investment, just molds alone. I don't even want to tell you the cost of that. And
Yeah,
then
reverse engineering.
you
But
don't
yeah,
get it right. It's like, oh, gotta throw those away. Oh my God, it's a big, it hurts. But when you really believe in what you created and for me, it's big. I'm a big mission person and I believe in my mission. And so I really believe that this is what I'm supposed to do. And even further than that is, I'm still advocating for standardization of active threat drills across the United States. I'll start with the schools, but why don't we have those? Why are they different everywhere? But if it's a fire, it's a fire. We all know what to do. Where is the discrepancy?
yeah. Well, it seems like back in the 50s, everybody had the nuclear drills, and it was like a standard thing.
Yeah.
And this is like it's a crisis in terms of people. You get a whole generation of students have been under this threat since
Yeah.
like Columbine or before that,
Right.
and not having like being. I was a sociology major, and I work in software design, so I'm familiar with design, but more kind of in the ether space, not physical design, but like software design is like in the AI,
Whole different.
system design, on big like policy admin systems and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But it's still the same engineering process. And so, you go through multiple iterations, and we're not making molds, but we're doing iterations. We're
Time.
using, yeah, there's a lots of iterations, and we go version 1.1 by 2.2, but like, we can have 100 variations, whatever, to 1,000. But
Right.
the idea, yeah, like, you whiteboard something and you blue sky stuff, and then you have to like, well, you have to deal with like the budget, and then you deal with like, well, this is the budget, but this idea could bring this. So like that risk
Totally.
analysis, if you're in that entrepreneur space, if you're in that startup space, people are willing to be pioneers. And
Right.
a lot of times, the initial reaction when people do work in this space is like people hate it. Like, they don't like your idea, they don't get your idea. And you do have to have a lot of passion, you have to have a risk tolerance, and
Yeah.
That to me, in the creative space, and it's the same thing. I'm left, right brain. I'm a musician,
Right.
and to me, like when you write a song, like that's your baby. No one gets it but you initially, and
It's,
you have to kind of stick with it because like if you have a lot of self doubt, you'll never finish.
you don't
So
believe, nobody else will believe.
yeah, so you have to have that. It's like, well, how can you have the audacity to believe that will work? Well, because yeah, I put on 10,000 hours of being a musician. I have a feeling it will work.
Exactly. You just have to have that steadfast belief in yourself. But for me, like you said, what keeps you going? Why did I keep investing more money and investing more, basically my savings? Was because just I tell my team all the time, imagine that call that we get. My child came home today because we had FlipLoks in their school. I mean, there's nothing more valuable to me.
When you know you're doing something, when you're actually coming up with a solution, because a lot of people talk,
That's
and then
right.
the people that do, and the
That's right.
people that have ideas, but then they never really. So I have an idea, but they never actually follow through. So it's a different type of person that actually takes that idea and carries it through,
That's
and
right.
then has the kind of foresight that like here's a problem instead of asking people like, well, what are we throwing your hands up? Is like actually go try to solve the problem.
That's right.
Um, and I think that's to me has always been, what makes me want to get up in the morning is the idea that I'm in this creative space, like in my day job, in my gig job. I'm in this world of people who create, and every day I find people who are doing new things, and it's really this is why we have this forum because there's this whole marketplace of ideas,
That's
you
right.
know, that's out here, and a lot of people are naysayers, and it's easy to be a hater, but I like to hang out with the doers.
Call those people the bucket of crabs. Stay away from them. All they want to do is pull you down, and they're going to still be in their rocking chairs while you're out figuring out. Now, trust me, some of the businesses we've done and ideas we've had, they didn't work out, and we lost a lot of money. But for me, this is not about the money. And there's a lot of things that you could say, I don't want to do it. I don't know if I should do it. But when you start thinking about being the change that you want to see and saving somebody's kid or your own or a teacher or anybody's life in general, whoever it is, I don't care who it is, even an animal, you
Yeah.
just really, it motivates you to know, no, nothing else motivates me like this. Nothing.
Yeah, well, school safety, I mean, it means a lot. Any parent, I'm a parent, and
Right.
I made a decision to kind of homeschool because of situations I was seeing, like bullying. And
Right.
I pulled my daughter out of a school system. It happened to be that there were predatory teacher that was like doing like
Yeah.
assault of children. So we had kind of got a vibe and we pulled our kid out. But like that's a whole different topic. But safety is a good concern because there's different degrees of safety in terms of like this environment is supposed to be a safe space for kids, a school,
That's
and
right.
there's all kinds of threats, bullying that can lead to the school shooting,
Yeah.
other things that can happen because people aren't being like background checks out there, not checking the teacher, checking their history, and making sure they are they who they should be. so
That's,
so like there's a lot of things that come into that safety space, and so when you got into the safety space, I know you branched into home safety, but are you still working on school safety ideas or I think with any design you continually evolve it, right?
of course, I'm always evolving, always growing, always looking for a better way to do and a better thing to improve, or what can I do to make it better? Like I said, when I first started, I didn't have a key or an unlocking mechanism for emergency personnel. I have that. Then I got we need a one motion egress. Okay, I got that. How can I make that better? How can I make that from what I originally made it to get it in compliance to like this amazing thing? Because there was one that you always start with your first one, but I think as you continue to innovate and say, it could be better if we did this. And that's where we, come together, my husband and I, and he's always thinking about things like that as well. And so, but for me, like you said, all these kids grow up in this world now where they have to go to school and they have to live with the real fear that somebody's coming in to hurt them. I say it all the time. I've never had to deal with that when I was a child. And, for me, having a lock on the door like FlipLok, where they could see it and know, like, oh, I know what I'm going to do if something happens. Now they
Mm,
can go back to studying. Now their
yeah.
anxiety, stress goes down. These kids have so much more things to be worried about than if somebody's going to come into their classroom to hurt them. How do you expect them to learn? right?
Yeah, well,
It's
there's a lot of stress. It's a stressor, and it's really interesting that so it's this device FlipLok in itself, is it totally mechanical, or we live in this age of all this tech, right?
right.
Everybody's got like Bluetooth and AI. Have you? Are there any thoughts to kind of? I'm just assuming it's all mechanical, or is any thought to like taking in the advantage of this new kind of AI age and information technology age and integrate some of the computer capabilities of this age?
Of course, there are. We have to also think about, we want something that somebody can't bypass, number one. Number two, we need it to be cost effective. Schools, that was the whole thing with this company. Even when I had to reinvest and make the one motion and make this, I really tried hard to keep the price the same or close, very, very close, because I do understand that schools have budgets and I do understand that, they have to make it work, especially when you're talking about, a district with 75 schools in their district. That's a
Mhm.
big ask, right? You're talking maybe $30,000, $40,000 a school is not a lot, but when you start adding up,
Yeah, it's a
each
lot.
school, it can get to be a lot. And so you have to be realistic. So yeah, AI and all these great, technologies are great to add to it, but then you're also adding in a residual build, for them. Now, if they wanted it and they said, hey, we'd be interested in it, but the prices I've gotten recently are just crazy. And I'm like, I can't entertain that because my job is not to gouge. My job is to protect.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
so,
Well,
not
sometimes in engineering, keep it simple
yeah,
is the thing, and some things get overly complex.
right. And the
You know,
same thing with the teachers. Like I said, we're losing great teachers because they're scared. Oh my God, I might freeze. And that's a real situation. We cannot blame our teachers for freezing. Your fight or flight reaction, you cannot help. Nobody knows what they're going
well,
to
they're
do.
not trained to be a police officer. I
That's
mean, a
exactly
teacher is trained to be a teacher. I mean, the
that's right.
idea that you make a teacher a police, well, that's not their real house,
Right. And
and
so
you
that's
shouldn't expect them to that to be their real house.
but the kids are lined up against the back of the classroom, and now we're dependent on this one person to go into action. Now, instead of depending on one person, which is a lot of pressure on one person, the
Yeah.
teacher, and get that lock on there where anybody in the classroom can do it. And I think
Well,
that's
yeah, you make it more available, then you have like more success. The success rate. You just you get into engineering and
hard everybody.
mathematics, and you figure out the ratios, and it's like you have one failure point. Like if you have that central point of failure, is like that's the key critical thing, and then you take that person out, then the whole thing falls apart.
Right.
If there's so many, if they have a lot of backups or redundancies,
Right.
in software design we build redundancies.
Well, you see
We
the
we,
Florida
we
State University, they showed the kids were stacking desks against the door. Are you kidding me? Like
yeah,
what in the world? And that doesn't work if the door's an outward swinging door. The person can just open it and go right in. So these kids are really left without viable solutions. And that's why I'm on this mission. And that's why, we have to do better for our community. It's time now. We can't continue to stick our head in the mud and not pay attention to the real life situation in front of us.
So is your flip block for the home similar to what you have for the school, or is it a different device for home?
So the school one is about 6 inches. It's big, red, and bold. I call it big, bold, and ugly. So you're going to go into, you're going to see it. But the home one is 3 inches. It's the school one holds over 2,000 pounds of force. First of all, the home
Mm,
one holds over 1,600 pounds of force. That was tested by QVC when I went on their testing facility. That one's silver, black, or bronze. And then people asked us because on the school side we have an inward and an outward if the door pushes out or if the door pushes in. And so they asked us for the home side to make an outward one. And so we did. And so we have that in silver and black for the outward, for people that have outward swinging doors for their home. So we have all of these variations that we've created and come up with because of what we've been asked for by, consumers actually.
mm. I think that's really interesting, like that you've been able to kind of branch out. Have you ever looked at like corporate use of it?
Yes, we're
Like,
in.
and because like dude, we've seen like these things happen at businesses, in office spaces too.
Right, and I've heard so many stories. Yes, we are in hospitals now. We're in some embassies in DC. We're in places that you would not even think. I personally didn't think, but I was really, honored to know that, what I created is something that government officials see the need for. That just solidifies and gives you that extra push to go, you're doing the right thing, continue. Because sometimes, like you said, entrepreneurship can be lonely. Thank God my best friend, my husband, is my partner, my business
Mm,
partner, all of our businesses. He's not as forefront on this particular business. This is really, my mission and passion company, but he is there very much so, helping me with innovating and coming up with new things. And this is what we see. And this is the feedback we got. What can we do? How can we make it better? And that's how we started. We still are creating and innovating things for our locks. And we're going to continue to do that and always trying to improve. Nothing's perfect. Anybody, like you said, the naysayers, anybody can try to pick anything apart. But the truth is, when you have good intentions, you stick to it. And I don't read any comments. I just don't read them because it'll just really make you feel some kind of way. And I can't let that energy come into my mission and my drive and my life to say that this is what I'm supposed to be doing. And anybody that's got so much time that all they want to do is critique me, it's not really worth my time to entertain.
Do you work with people who come up with like safe rooms? Have you like integrated with anybody who
Yeah.
works on safe room, and
Mhm.
then maybe found a way to kind of integrate your lock into that into their business too?
Like I said, embassies have put me in. And so, they're going to have those kinds of rooms. And for them to add that in to say, when all your fine motor skills leave your body, we can do this and then go to plan B, C, and D, right? But this
Hmm.
is what gets you secure, quick, fast, in a hurry. And then
Yeah.
you'll be able to do X, Y, and Z. So, yes, absolutely. And, we have people that train, how to breach, or people that train what to do in an active threat situation. And they also are partnered with us and out showing my lock, to people that need to see it in schools and
Wow. So
prison.
your synergy into the whole into training and then into the safe room industry, like so you
As
get some
long as
synergies that you can link in
it
with the
can,
whole security like
right?
domain.
That's
That
right. That's right. And people can, see that, if they can get into their home and they can, lock that door really quick. You flip it, it drops, it locks. It's pretty simple. You flip, it drops, it locks. FlipLok. It's pretty easy, easy to
Yeah,
remember.
well, just to keep it simple, it's like the overall like I said, I'm in the engineering, but, like, we get people who do these overly complicated things, and it's like, well, if with some things, if you have an elegant, simple solution, the complex solution has too many fail points,
That's right.
or has to it has a tendency to be, like, overly wrought, and it doesn't really do it, right? So if you
Right.
find the simple solutions, we run into that with some of our tech today, it's like, you can't fix it without somebody, like, having to dive into, like, you have a totally electronic car,
It's too technical.
and
Yeah. Nobody can.
and your CPU goes and your engine doesn't work, and it's like, well, an engine from the '70s doesn't have that, and it'll work without that. So,
That's, it's
isn't there, like, a bottom line where you still can have this thing work if the CPU goes out, or is it totally dependent on that CPU being in there? And
exactly,
sometimes we've gone a little too reliant on some of our tech, and we don't have the understands, like, we need to have backups for so we
exactly.
don't do that.
Exactly. If somebody cut the power, or is there some way back up all this other stuff they have in place, but it doesn't mean that it won't happen. And so how can we make sure that we have a fail safe place or a way for everybody to be able to do something in that moment, and, back to my, having a standardized system, I don't think it's going to be perfect, but what can it do? It can get at least everybody in that room to know they're under attack, and it can get them all to get down. Like, when you hear it, get low and know that you need to be protecting yourself. And
Yeah,
that will leave the person standing up by themselves. And then the police or whoever needs to handle that can handle that. But right now it's chaos and they just disappear into the crowd. What are we doing? We can do better.
yeah. Yeah, well, so you got a coordination with, like, the overall training and, people doing drills and trying to get like you're saying, like, you found that there were drills that are different from state to community to different
In the
you know
same school district, they're different in the same district. My friend's a substitute, and she was like, Anna, because I said that in different districts. She was like, no, in the same district. It's like, wow.
so do you work with, like, with, people in the government to try to make awareness that,
I'm
at a
working.
legislative level and a federal level, state
Yeah,
level,
I
there
am.
needs to be some consistency. So maybe you're like trying to you know, I'm sure it sounds like you're in that awareness stage where you're out there pitching this to everybody that will listen.
That's exactly where we are. And anybody that'll open the door, I'm gonna go in. This is Easter Saturday for me. And I have a little one at home. And so I'm like, after I do this, we'll come and we'll dye Easter eggs. So, because this is very important to me as well. My family's important, but this is just as important, and so I think, like you said, I got to get out there to anybody that will, listen and have me. And so thank you for that, for creating a platform where people like myself can come out and, share our entrepreneurial, wins, struggles, but also what is it? What is it? What is the reason you're doing this? Because most entrepreneurs have a real reason and it's not always financial.
No,
There's
yeah.
something that
Well, a
motivates.
lot of times, like I say in the creative space, like in the arts, a lot of times, like people will point out in the arts is like we do it because we love it. If it
Mhm.
works, that's fine, and that's gravy. That the money, but I was gonna do that artistic activity anyway.
Yep.
A lot of people think we do it just to make the money. But like if you play a blues person and you're or jazz, you play it because you love it. And it happens to work and make money. That's gravy. But like we're in it because we believe in it. It's like our second nature. It's like breathing.
Yep. It's the
So
passion.
so when you get to that space where you have a passion about like your vision of what you want to do, that to me will make sure it happens. Because if you're present and you're out there and you believe in something, then it's infectious. The kind of law of attraction.
That's right.
If you're
And
out there and you believe in yourself, people pick up on that. People know that you're not just out there and misrepresenting what something because it's actual. I think to me it's that feeling of authenticity. Right?
right.
Like if you're out there and you're just pitching it because you want to make money, people will kind of smell that, they'll
Yeah.
sense it. And if you're out there and you really believe it, they'll feel that and they'll sense that.
That's right. I agree. And that's the big difference, right? Between the people that really are out there doing it they really care, and then the people that don't. But you have to have your passion behind no matter what. Even if you're a musician, if people say, "Oh, your music sucks," people told a lot of the most famous people now that their music sucked. Lady
Yeah.
Gaga, a lot of people, they believe
Dylan,
in
Dylan,
themselves.
they told him when he went electric, that was terrible,
Yeah,
in '66, and then, by the '70s, it was like he was a standard bearer of that style. But,
yeah,
you have to like, haters will always come along, and I guess another lesson learned, like, in as a female entrepreneur, as a woman entrepreneur, are there lessons learned for other people in this space who are women entrepreneurs that you could, like, kinda relate to the audience, like, things that like, nuggets of knowledge that you
absolutely.
found?
Absolutely. I think, like you said, when I go into a room, I'm a woman, I'm a mom, I'm a businesswoman, but I'm talking about a lock. I'm talking about a lock solution. First thing they think is I'm in here, I'm just trying to sell my lock, whatever that looks like. And a lot of the people that I'm talking to are in safety and security. Now I've had such support, but a lot of times I don't get that support. I always get the one person in the back that wants to ask you all these questions, that wants to I always try to find that person first, and because that's going to be my new best friend, because I'm always glad that they ask me the hard questions so I can get that over with first. And so, I think you have to address those things and don't ever, ever let anybody see you feel insecure or not have an answer. You have to have your answers. Don't get up there and don't go up there. I need to have it perfect. No, you get up
Mhm.
there, you do what you do, and you keep doing it. And you know what? You might make some mistakes, but guess what? You're never going to make a mistake or learn or grow if you don't get out there and do your first one, because people are like, oh, I need to perfect this. I need to perfect that. You won't make the same mistake twice. I promise you. You get up there and you stink it up one good time, you won't do it twice. You'll be much more
Yeah.
next time. And I think the more you can prepare yourself, the better and stronger and more confident you can become. When I knew I was going on this group trip, American Leadership Forum, I'm one of the fellows, and they were like, we're going to go hiking in the mountains in Colorado. I was like, oh no. When I go up, in high altitude, like I can barely breathe, walk into the, down hallway. So I hired a trainer. I started running. I didn't want to be the weakest link in my group because I knew my, downfalls and my weaknesses.
Mhm.
So I think that's
Mhm.
the when I knew I was going to do a TEDx talk, I was like, oh my, I'm going to go to a speaking class, or I'm going to take an acting class. There was a kids camp here, and I just went with the kids and did a kids acting camp to
Yeah.
understand my presence. And I think there's ways you can do that, but don't make it an excuse or a crutch, or you'll never ever, be able to bring anything to fruition.
Yeah, I think one thing from jazz that I've always tried to relate to people is like in the jazz kind of mindset, there's this idea of like there's no bad note, there's an opportunity. So
That's
this
right.
guy goes into the idea of happy accidents, which is a big part of being a creative, is
Mhm.
every step along the way is like a rung on the ladder, and it's not a bad thing that like it wasn't perfect. In fact, in art, imperfections are what makes the art.
That's
Painters and artists and actors will tell you, like, like, you could try to get something perfect, but it's sometimes it's that happy accident, that kinda thing that you didn't expect that actually is the magic.
yeah, that
And
becomes what you're known for now because you do that thing.
yeah, and that they it's a craft, like, you do 10,000 hours. It doesn't mean that you're gonna anticipate everything. You talk to, like, athletes, they could practice and they do their they practice all the plays, but then they might see in the moment, they train, but something happens that they didn't expect. Now
That's
you
right.
could either freeze or you can innovate or, be able to handle that on the fly.
That's
The
right.
best the best athletes, the ones that, like, when they get that unknown scenario, they actually still are able to handle it
Right.
without say, well, their mind doesn't go say, well, I don't know what that is, and then freeze like a doe in the headlights. Like that's the thing you have to try to get to. Now that if you freeze, you learn from it. But the idea that you can not have to have everything perfect or pre-planned, that's
That's You have to
that,
be flexible. You have to be able to go with the flow. And like you said, you have to be able to go into things not having all the answers because you're not going to have all the answers. You're going to get, especially, when you're speaking, like I speak all the time, you're going to get people that are, maybe not going to be where, at the beginning, I had a lot of pushback, right?
mhm.
You don't have a key, you don't have this, I didn't go, oh, darn, that's it. I'm going to go to sleep and throw my whole idea away. I said, you know what? How can I turn that no into a yes? Because I definitely am going to get up and speak again. But guess what? I'm not going to ever be in that situation again. So I told my husband, you get out there and you go make me a key for this thing. I don't care how you do it. And it needs to be the same for both locks, inward and outward. And go figure it out and help me because I need to get up there and I'm going to go speak to that group again. And then I'm going to wait for that one to give me that question because I'm going to be like, I'm so glad you asked me that question. Here
Yeah.
we are.
That's a year you put something in the world until you put it in the world, you won't know how you might need to adjust.
Yeah,
And I
adjust.
think and that's the thing is like you could go, as a public speaker, you could have your
Mm,
have the teleprompter all set up. But then if you start to like, like a comedian, when they start to recognize that it's joke's not working, it's bombing. They
yeah.
pivot. They pivot. Now if you still kept on going with the teleprompter when you know it's not working, but then you're gonna bomb all night. It's like that's the idea they be able to pivot and sometimes know that, hey, this thing on the teleprompter is practice, but it's not working with this crowd.
That's right.
So
You have
you
to
have to adjust.
You have to adjust, or, you have to, but you have to also, don't beat yourself up. Some of the best comedians have got up there and said, I got booed, I got heckled. Everybody goes through that. You're not going to get up there and be a superstar overnight. You're not going to be overnight success is 10 to 15 years. Let's just be honest. Whoever
Mhm.
you've seen their company's a big giant, well, they've been working on that thing for at least 5 to 10 years. I can promise you that.
Yeah.
Nobody gets anything done overnight. Now FlipLok people have heard of us or they're hearing of us, but it's almost 5 years into the game. It's not been an easy deal. I've been everywhere on every platform speaking to anybody that will listen. And so you have to put in the work. Nobody's going to come knock at my door unless I'm picking up Amazon packages.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, that's that thing is, like, you have to be present, you have to show up, and, like, I know my grandpa was a coal miner, and he said, "Yeah, going into mine's a hard thing, and every day you gotta show up, you gotta show up."
That's
Like,
right.
and you just doing it, being present will with the podcast, I started this thing back in 2016. First 10 episodes, whatever, I didn't know what I was doing. Now, some people, they do that first 10 episodes in the podcast space, and if it doesn't go the way they expect, they stop. That's like the number of people who stop after 10 episodes is, like, super high. But
Wow.
the people who keep on going and it didn't really you evolve, and if
That's
you show up over time, you get better,
right.
and
Build
it's just
trust. People
it just
understand.
yeah, I mean, you gotta show up. If you show up, then you're gonna learn, and if you're not willing to learn and you don't listen to feedback, that's one thing, but over time, I think if you actually, do the job or have that ability to get up and shake it off and get back in the game, that's how you keep on going.
That's exactly right. Dust yourself off, and there's another day. It's not that serious. It didn't work out the way you thought it would, but guess what? There's another day tomorrow. Don't look back. I always say, yesterday's gone. Let's go with tomorrow. Let's go with today right now. And tomorrow will come when tomorrow comes. Let's just get what we can done today and do it now. Don't wait.
What are your thoughts about having people work in business as a family or hiring family members? What's your opinion on that?
Well, that's funny because for me, for one of our first businesses, my husband and his brother had actually started it together. His brother started, then he brought my husband in, and then my husband brought me in because we needed to take it as a wig business. And so it worked out for a while, but then you always, sometimes you get, it doesn't work out. And so, but for FlipLok, I have brought in my stepson, Nico. He does a lot of my videos and commercials, and I've had such a great experience with him that, I think pigeonholing family as a negative is not not really what you should do. But I do think that whatever you do when you bring in your family, you need to write up a contract. You need to write a contract, and these are the expectations. It's like anybody else that gets a job, and this is what we need, and this is what we expect from you, and these are the consequences if that doesn't go through, right? If you don't hold
Yeah.
the bargain, otherwise you've set yourself up for failure. But that happens with anybody, right? But your family, but you got to start them. They can't come in and be the CEO, right? You got to let them build and work their way up. And I think that's the biggest problem with family. You think you owe them something, or they think you owe them something. And really, you're doing them a disservice because they're not actually learning how to grow and be successful and how to learn how to manage the team if you do decide to step out. And so I think when you bring people in that are family, you have to be willing, number one, to write the contract and have the hard conversation from the beginning. This is what's expected. This is the deal. And then you have to be willing to train. But in that, really, you have to be willing to let them fail a little bit. Something's not going to go 100%, and you cannot blame them and you have to take that responsibility. I brought them in. I have to give them enough leeway to make mistakes so that they can grow, but just to have that communication with them where you go, hey, if something goes bad, you bring it to me right away so we can solve it. There's nothing we can't solve. We have questions and answers, problems and answers, but we never cannot solve something because at the end of the day, it's my company and I'm going to have to deal with whatever mistake you made.
Mhm. Yeah, I think it's important to just have that kind of communication understanding, because if you don't have the contract, then it's like assumptions always are a problem. You assume something, and people say, "Well, I thought it was going to be this." If it's not written, you don't know what are the expectations. If you don't have that expectation of what the performance metrics are, or what the expectation, what is the outline of what your job responsibilities are, like how do you know if you're successful? You got you work with a startup, is like, how do we know we're successful? Like, how do
Mhm.
we know if, like, is it because we're making a profit because we completed the task, or because we completed you got to have the milestones. Everybody needs to understand, like, what's the measure?
That's
What are
right.
we doing? You know?
That's And I think that's the biggest thing when people bring in family members, they don't set the structure up, which I'm guilty. Guilty. I did it in a couple other businesses, but trust me, with FlipLok, I learned. You get them to sign an NDA. Look, we're not talking about business outside of the business. This is not for you to go talk to mom, to grandma, to this is in our business. You have to, because otherwise you expect them to do that. But if they're not, it's not set in stone. Like, we need to look
Yeah.
at this and they need to read and understand it. They think, oh, well, I thought it was fine. And then you feel some kind of way, and then they feel some kind of way because you're upset, but they didn't know that. And so that's your responsibility as an owner or business person if you want to bring them on and do that.
But I think listening is always the thing. It's like you have to learn how to listen to yourself, listen to other people, and then process that communication in a way that's like, did you really hear what was said? Or did you kind of just put a lens on it and only hear part of it? And I
That's
think that's the thing that, communication is so important in any kind of enterprise, is like what people thought they heard. And I deal with a lot of international teams, and people is like, well, English is the primary language. But like, if you have a team with somebody that they're in China, or they're in India, or they're in Germany, or like, if you don't understand
that's
cultural aspects or language aspects, like, you make these assumptions,
that's
and
right.
like, make sure that everybody understands, like, what is it that we're actually saying, and did they actually get the point?
Yeah. Yes, and that's exactly what it is, you know. So it's funny you say that, you know, because I saw this video the other day on Instagram or something, and it was like the police was going up to this girl, and he goes, you know, he's giving her a ticket, and she's like, but it says parking fine, you know, parking fine here or something, and he goes, no, it's a fine. You're gonna
Yeah,
get. She's like from another country, right? Had no
yeah,
idea.
yeah,
It's
yeah. That's the thing is, like, I worked in Japan for a long time,
oh, cool.
and in the Japanese language, there's a lot of things that are implied.
Mm.
And as you get a document, sometimes it's a lot smaller than the English equivalent document. And they were like, wow, because we're stating it's explicitly certain things. In the Japanese language, it's like assuming certain things. And so then what we found is we had to come up with like these diagrams that were more like flow charts so
Yeah,
that we made sure that people actually understood what the steps were, because the language was getting to be a problem where people like weren't weren't actually understanding the Japanese or the English. And so let's actually whiteboard it and put it into a visual language
right.
of like decision trees, and then people understanding what is this? What happens when you say yes? What happens if you say no? What happens if it goes here? What goes there? And we found that we got a lot more understanding in that language situation because we realized that the languages, English and Japanese, were having a like they were crossing over and people weren't getting it.
Yeah, no, and that happens in everything, right? Like if you get up and you're telling people and you don't deliver in the way that you thought, you know, sometimes it's best also when you're, you know, as a business person to sit in front of your computer and record yourself talking because you don't know what your impact is until you see yourself and hear yourself. I have a coach. I've had a coach for I think like 12 years, 13 years now. And I didn't hire her initially. She was a friend of a friend. And then long story short, we became friends and she took me on as like, I really see a lot of potential in you. And I saved her life. She was choking on peppermint. And then I think, you know, I always say, you know, I saved her life realistically. And she saved my life, you know, in other ways because she taught me to listen, which was, oh my God, I was not a good listener. I'll be honest. You know, I thought I had to do everything myself. I was so important in everything. Like, I got to do this. I got to do this. I would have never been able to grow with what I've learned for FlipLok, for example, to grow my business as fast as I have. If I was the only one that was
Oh,
answering,
delegation.
yeah,
Like a lot of times entrepreneurs, they get into a problem where they don't delegate enough
right.
because
I'm
they
a
think
super
it,
delegator.
well, at a certain point, like you want to own it, but there's a point where you do have to like teach your vision and find people who can implement it and then know what you don't know or know what you can't do.
Hire your weakness. That's the
Yeah,
best
so
thing
if
to
you find like I'm not the best, if you I'm not the best architect or I'm not the best UI person or I'm not the best engineer or accountant, and then you try to be the accountant because you want to control it. It's like, well, you're like, what do you know about accounting? Do you have a CPA? Do you know? Are you an actuary? Like maybe that's not your warehouse. Maybe you're the idea person, but you're not the actuarial person.
right.
Trying to
That's
be the actuarial person and or the tax law person or the regulation person is like if that's not your wheelhouse, you're not going to do a good job, right?
that's right.
So you kind of got to let that go and then find somebody you trust that can actually do it.
So the key to success, a successful entrepreneur, and this was quoted from my coach, was you want to work on the business. You don't want to work in the business. So your goal is, of course, in the beginning, you have to set the foundation. I had to work hours, hundreds and thousands of hours on this building the systems because anywhere there's a, she says, anywhere there's a stress, you need a system. And I'm a
Mm.
good systems person. I love systems. I'm sure you do systems in a different world, but for me, setting up office culture systems, you know, what do we do with customer service? What do we do? Q&A, it's a lot that you have to build, right? And so
Mhm.
I think when you set those up, you set yourself up with the foundation, and then you have to be willing to let you, like I said, your team make some mistakes along the way. They're not, you don't give them enough where they're going to jeopardize your company, but enough where
Yeah.
they can go, oh, you know, she's going to support me if I make another one. And you build that relationship, but you also build them up to be able to move into different positions. And then you can continue growing your team, you know, more and more and more. And that's where I am now. I have quite a few employees now. And this particular company, I have other businesses already that are still going, but this is my mission and passion company. So I'm very much involved in everyday business here. You know, I'm here every day, Monday through Friday. I get here at 8 a.m. every day.
Yeah. I think that's really important to be, you know, understand like what is your capacity? Because some people, they start getting a little too over, like maybe they overreach.
Yeah,
It's like 'cause you might have started one company here, then you were really involved. You started another one, you get three, you get four, but then it's like if you're like if you how are you really gonna run that company number one when you're at company number five? Are they waiting for a decision from you, but you're all your time is on 5 and you're not in 1 anymore.
that's
So,
right.
like, what did you like can you let enough go so that company can actually function?
Exactly. You have to build your team before you can move on to company number 2 or 3 because you're just setting yourself up for stress,
Yeah,
burnout. Burnout is a real thing. It happened to me once, and I learned really, really quickly that my health and my mental health and my downtime is really, really, really valuable. You have to take that as an entrepreneur. We got to do, we got to do. No, take the time, get away. I go on my women's retreats with my
mhm.
entrepreneur women group and go every year, and that week away that we spend, we come back ready to so many clear ideas. You're in the forest all day. You can't see any trees. You don't see
Yeah,
anything,
it's
you
like a
know?
recovery, like a musician, like, if you spend too much time in rehearsal,
Yeah.
by the time you get to the show, you might, like, end up getting carpal tunnel and you can't play your bass, right? So you have to kinda let something go. It's like, you've already done, like, 20,000 hours of being a musician, like, how much rehearsal do you really need? Or it's a crutch that you gotta get out of that loop? Because if you do you get too hung up on something, then you're gonna end up crashing, right? Because
Exactly.
so you gotta know what you need to do to prepare, but don't over prepare, right?
Exactly. So I don't anymore. Like when I'm going to present or do something, I'm like, I got it. Before I was like, oh my God, I got to get it perfect. And I didn't, I never got it perfect, but I was like, I really got to prepare. And now I'm like, you know what? I know this. It's my baby. It's the back of my hand.
Yeah,
On the rest, the night before my TEDx talk, I was really nervous. It was my first time doing a big, like you said, you just started. I had never done a big talk to anybody like that, and it was a lot, and you don't get a prompter and you don't get notes, and you
yeah,
just have to memorize 10 to 15 minutes of your speech, and it's tough. But it was my first time, and I did it. I wasn't perfect. There's a lot of things I wish I could have did or said better, or left out that I wish I would have said, but guess what? I got that opportunity, and I did it, and I didn't let it pass me by either.
yeah,
So
'cause, they get the art like I always point out, like, you get I have some artist friends, like, a painter, and they went to their loft, and they got all these paintings, and I'm like, "Wow, these are amazing. Are they in the gallery?" He's like, "No, they're not ready." I'm like, "They look ready to me, but, like, if you don't believe it, then you're never gonna put them in the gallery." It's like, there's stuff in the gallery that's, like, not as good as this,
yeah,
right? Like, you're thinking something's like, I don't know where when it's gonna be good, but, like, at some point, you have to get to point you gotta put it out there.
put it
Now
out.
yeah, and yeah, you might get a critic that says, "Oh, no," but you might get somebody else that wants to you get a patron that goes and gets you the next gallery, gets you the next show. So it's a cost benefit. It's like, yeah, somebody might say they don't like it, and then you might get the Patreon that gets you, all over the world. So
You
you
have
have no idea.
there. You have to put yourself out there. And like you said in the beginning, you have to believe in yourself. Don't let anybody take you away from your vision, your dream, and what it is that drives you, whether that's music, whether that's business, whether that's being a mom, stay-at-home mom. Everybody's going to say, oh, it's not a good job. Yes, it is. It's the most important job on the planet. We need our kids to be loved and raised correctly. So I think everybody has their role in everything that we do. So I think you just have to listen and believe in yourself, and don't believe in yourself, and everybody else will believe in you. And the people that don't believe in you, those aren't your people. Let them
Yeah,
go.
yeah, you have to. Yeah, you'll find your law of attraction. You find the tribe of people that are gonna be with you,
That's
and
right.
the people that kind of fall off. Well, you found new people.
Well,
You
that's
know,
like that. I think it's Steve Harvey or somebody said, we're like on a rocket, and you're going up on the rocket, but the boosters got to get off. They can't go up there with you. Some people can't go where you're going. They got to
yeah,
go, but
they gotta drop off. Yeah,
you got to go. And this might be something you got to do on your own. But guess what? They were there when, it was when they could, as long as they could be. And you did what you could do for them.
So do you have like a lot of times when you're in a company that's designing things, do you have like release dates that far out in the future for like new
Yes.
designs? Like do
Yes.
you plan out like by 1 year, 2 year, 3 year, 4 year plans? Do you have stuff like that going on?
Yes. Absolutely.
Yeah. Well, yeah, every artist, we got our project in the can for 2026 and maybe something just for 2027.
That's right. You
Like
know,
that's you have all these ideas that you gotta be like these projects, and this one's in the can, this
yeah.
one's in ongoing, and this one's like, this one is like just a little thought in the head.
Exactly, exactly. And you just keep cultivating those. It's not the time for it right now, but hey, 2027 looks pretty good for that. And then if 2026, you can always pull from that can, but at least you have it there. Because the problem is people like creatives like yourself, my husband's a creative visionary. You have to get it out of your mind or else you're going to keep thinking or you're going to lose it. You don't want to lose that creative creation. Put it out. It doesn't have to be for today, but
Mhm.
there because you got to get it out of your mind so you can rest or build the next thing. You need to make room for the next idea.
Yeah, yeah, I've always run into people like, authors in the middle of a book, they get a spark of another book, but they still put it down in the journal, and so, "Well, this isn't gonna work in this novel, but this is the kind of a spark for the next one."
Right.
But they actually still journaled it, put it down and put it somewhere,
Yeah.
and that's where as, like, creators, like, we got a lot of, pieces of paper, the backs of menus, with a napkin here with something on it, scribbled on it, all these, like, things sitting around because like, that's the way sometimes it comes to you in the car or the shower, in the woods, whatever, it comes to you, you voice memo it or something, and you just, like, you put it down.
Exactly. Yeah, no, that's the way you have to do it. Otherwise you sometimes might lose it and be like, oh my gosh, what was that thing? It was really good. And then you're mad at yourself for forgetting or losing it, right? But some of those things I consider those gifts. They come and they only come once. And if you don't write them down or keep them, you're gonna be upset with yourself.
Well, I wanna thank you for being here on the weekend, to give a talk to us about your product, FlipLok, and I wish you great success with this. It's a really like your goal for this is not like other products is safety, like a safety product. It's actually, really in the headlines today. We hear these kind of incidents all the time, and you actually, stood up and thought about it and like, hey, this is something that could help and to
Yep.
get it in the world. I think that's super important for people to have these ideas out in this space. That's why we have this show to talk about this. But I want to thank you for being a guest on the Family Electric Coach podcast.
Thank you so much for having me again. I really appreciate this opportunity. And, it was great to meet you and great to be a guest for all of your viewers.
Well, thank you. And like I said, we've been live on Facebook, LinkedIn, and YouTube. That will be out in the world immediately. And then we'll be on the podcast platforms that people are familiar with, like Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Video Podcast, Amazon, iHeartRadio by tomorrow. And that will be communicated with a landing page, and people just use whatever ever platform they're comfortable with. They kind of go back and replay and listen to it in the car or the plane or anywhere they like to listen to podcasts. But thank you for being again on the show again.
Thank you. Nice to meet you.